Hey everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Off the Record show, and I'm Aram Melkoumov, the host. Thanks for tuning in. On the show, I'm interviewing well-known CEOs and venture capitalists about their entrepreneurial journeys, how they built businesses, raised money, hired rock star and pop stars, and didn't quit along the way. As a founder, you'll hear practical insights into their world, the psychology, their thinking, so you can apply it into your own company and get better as you progress. Today, I'm joined by Foti, who has an extensive background in growth marketing and has co-founded Growth Mentor, a two-sided marketplace, a platform that gives entrepreneurs the ability to connect with growth mentors for calls. They started in September 2018 and have since grown it quite a bit, mainly through free marketing channels. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Let's start off. Tell us a bit about Growth Mentor. Like, how does it work as a business, and how did you start it?
Sure. So Growth Mentor works by matching founders and marketers, product managers with vetted growth marketing and startup mentors for one-on-one calls. So just kind of like exchange ideas, bounce, talk about their challenges, try and debug growth challenges. And it just gives them an outlet to have really high quality one-on-one conversations. So we started, as you said, in September 2018, and over 10,000 calls have been booked through the platform so far. We charge a membership fee to join the community, and with that, we give our members unlimited calls with any of the mentors that are offering their time for free. And if they want to book a call with paid mentors, then that's extra. But all of the mentors that join Growth Mentor, they have to do their calls for free until they get 3 reviews. It's what we call our give first pricing model. But most of the mentors just end up staying on as free mentors because as part of the vetting process, we make sure that the values are aligned and that they genuinely want to mentor and help people and aren't doing it just as some lead generation for their consultancy. In a nutshell, that's what it is.
Cool. And how did you come up with this idea?
The short answer is just to scratch my own itch. I needed something like this. So I was a head of growth at the company that my brother started called EuroVPS. It's a managed hosting company, and I wore many hats, and I made a lot of mistakes. And ultimately, for me, what worked to get myself unstuck was just talking with really smart people that are doing at a high level things that I want to get better at. So, that's pretty much it. There's another story behind it as well, like how the spark that got the idea. But long story short, I was just trying to solve my own problem. Classic sort of startup story.
Scratching your own itch, which is always the best way to do it. Now, I'm trying to recall, but I think might not be the exact same, but there was a company that I was using kind of a similar service. I think it was called Clarity.fm by Dan Martell. This goes back like a few years. I think they were one of the first people to do it. Funny enough, I actually became one of the advisors on that platform as a mentor as well. Mm-hmm. So what made you see Growth Mentor be a differentiator towards other products already in the market?
So Clarity FM, you're right. They were one of the pioneers in this space, connecting experts with those that are seeking advice. And honestly, like when I first had the idea, I didn't know they existed. And then I was Googling around to see if anyone else was doing it, and I stumbled upon them, and I'm like, oh man, screw it, someone else has done it, right? So I shelved the idea for a year and a half because of that, because I can't compete. Then I thought about it after a while, and I was like, well, these guys, they're connecting people on telephone calls, and they're charging per minute. Like, who's on the telephone in back then it was 2017. Like, everyone's on Skype or Zoom calls or whatever, right? Like, doing screen shares, showing things. I mean, that's how I collaborated with advisors that I would find on Upwork. I would do screen shares. I was like, well, there's got to be a gap here, especially considering it's that permanent rate. And some of the rates I don't know how much money you were charging, but like if I was looking at Clarity FM back then, I was like, I was seeing $5 a minute, $3 a minute, $10 a minute, some people $20 a minute, Dan Martell $83 a minute. And I was like, no early stage startup could ever afford this, right? Like, pay $1,000 for an hour call. I mean, what are you going to do with that advice anyway, right? So I was like, that our gap in the market is going to be the people that like enjoy helping, right, and are doing it because it gives them a dopamine release, helping people, right? And Clarity was very transactional in nature, and that was our sort of like way that we could shoehorn ourselves in and compete. So it was very much value-based differentiation.
So it's really interesting. You came up with the idea, you did some research, then you found Clarity and maybe some other options, and then you shelved the idea. And then it says, you said a year and a half later, you picked it up again. So like, that's not very common, I think. What made you kind of like, aside from the fact that their model was a bit different, but like, it still takes a lot of courage and a lot of perseverance to still go against the norm or against like, some larger players in the space, to go and try to compete with them. And you're competing at the end of the day against market share, against attention. So like, what made you get that urge, that momentum to go and still do this?
I was
personally, maybe.
Yeah, I what happened is I had a call with this Ruby on Rails developer, and this was after I got drunk with my wife. We were having some beers, and we're like, all right, we can do this. Let's talk about it again. We were just having chats, right? And then we got really excited about it that morning. And I'm like, hey, Jessica, didn't you have that English? You taught English online on Skype, right? I was here full time. I was like, didn't you have that guy Maciek? Wasn't he like this Ruby on Rails developer? He's like, yeah, he has this agency and he builds web apps. Like, let's call him up and ask him how much it would cost to develop a MVP of something like this, right? And I showed the example of the platform that was very similar to what we made. We're in a different adjacent market, in a completely different market called italkguy.com, which is a language tutor platform, right? And then I was like, functionally, it does the job that we want to do. It connects people for calls. It's like, how much would it cost to make something like this? Like, I don't know, like 15 grand, 20 grand. I'm like, all right, well, that's not that bad. Yeah. Like, it was at that time I was thinking about buying this car, and it would cost like 20 grand. And I was like, I'm just not going to buy the car. I'm just going to do this. So it was a mental gymnastics I play with myself. It was just the opportunity cost of cash, like, for me. Yeah. And I figured if it doesn't work, then I'll just pretend that I crashed my car and I totaled it. Yeah, like that. That's like that.
It. And so did it work out? Did it end up costing that 15-20K? Did you bring that person on as
three times more?
3 times more? Yeah, it's always the case. It's the reality.
Yeah, and he told me, he's like, whatever I tell you, don't believe me. It's going to be probably double, and you got to be okay with that, right? So, yeah, I had to. We were very, very, very poor for a very long time until we started making money. Like, hadn't paid it was tough, but yeah, I effectively went all in on my own personal savings to finance this. And yeah, thankfully it worked out.
Yeah, that is a mix of I think luck and then also building a good product that people need in many ways. Very similar, right?
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And so did that developer end up joining the team, or was it they did V1 and then
it was an outsourced software house based in Poland? So
okay. Interesting. Okay. And what does your team composition look like now? Did you end up, like, after you built the MVP or like V1 through the software house, did you end up bringing it? Did you end up bringing people in-house to continue it, or?
No, we're still using them. They're amazing. And awesome. It's as if we have an in-house team. So I have 2 full-time developers and 1 part-time front-ender, and I have a project manager there. We have our weekly Scrum meetings. So it effectively is as if I have them in-house, but I just have that security that they're under the umbrella of the software house, which manages a lot of the bits and bobs.
Okay. No, it's good. That's I'm happy to hear you're still in a relationship with him. That's always a good sign.
Yeah,
Um,
it's rare generally. Like
it's rare. Yeah, it's
a
rare.
lot of horror stories.
Um, and so just out of curiosity as well, like, as a founder, what made you go and make that decision that you were gonna, because I'm assuming you're non-technical, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So what made you not go bring on a technical co-founder, and, do it, with sweat equity, and they would help you build it out as a partner versus going and finding a dev firm to do it?
Because I'm technical enough to be able to manage technical people. I've been doing that for a long time at EuroVPS. So my entire team was filled with engineers. So um, it helped that I did have those engineers as a backup in case I ever needed a second opinion or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother is highly technical as well. So I had that support group. If I didn't, maybe I would have made a different decision. But honestly, it never even crossed my mind to bring a technical co-founder at that stage, because I really did trust Ragnarsson, that agency, and I really liked that he actually flew to Greece to interview me as a client before accepting to take our project. So they do things in a very different way than most agencies.
Oh, good, cool, awesome. So I learned a lot about your journey there. Thanks for sharing that. Next question I wanted to ask was, from what I understand, you did a lot of Upwork job postings for marketing consulting earlier on. How did these things work out for you? Did it help with like product market fit or figuring out the business? Like, what was the rationale for that?
So yeah, I was doing a lot of Upwork calls before I started Growth Mentor with EuroVPS, just to get second opinions on things I was working on, because I realized that there was an inverse relationship between my productivity and how much content I consumed. And for me, the best way of learning is active learning. Learn by making mistakes. Hopefully, less mistakes than successes. But what I would do is I just jump on calls with, let's say I was setting up a drip campaign, and I didn't know how to do something, or wanted a second opinion on a Facebook ad campaign. Instead of looking at courses and stuff, I would just go to Upwork, make a job posting for a freelancer, say, hey, who wants to jump on a 30-minute call with me and give me some advice on what I'm working on. We did a screen share. I'd show them, and that helped me get unstuck and helped me give me that confidence that either I'm on the right track, right? And that going through those calls on Upwork was really what gave me that first sort of taste of what it would be like on Growth Mentor for people to do that. So that really inspired the product direction, right? Like, and the whole concept behind it. So it's kind of like the hacking together. Like, I basically hacked together a kind of Growth Mentor using Upwork in a sense.
Interesting. And what has your experience been of Upwork? Like, a lot of founders I speak to, some have really good experiences, some have really bad experiences.
I love Upwork. I think that it depends on your ability to be a good screener and vetter. Like, if you can do that, then there's so many people on there. There's amazing talent and there's terrible people as well. What I always do is I hire multiple people for the same project, and I'll give like a watered down version of it just for a test project, and the best one wins, right? So
what would you say are some good tips for, I mean, you've gone through this journey. I think you did it the right way in terms of how you built the company, but what tips can you recommend to first-time founders who are in the same position as you were right now, in terms of how to get their initial product idea off the ground? Like, what things can you suggest to them, like top 5 things or whatever, that they could take into account to have some sort of success in their business?
Yeah, great question. I'd say that the number one tip is to build a clickable prototype of your idea before you start talking too much about it to other people and asking them questions, what they think, their opinion, and so on and so forth. Because it's not hard. There's so many awesome tools out there available now that you can do that, and that's what we did with Growth Mentor. We spent like 1 month, and just every single screen we designed it in Sketch, and then we put it in InVision app, and we had little hotspots, clickables. So when we wanted to do user research, it wasn't just, hey, here's a landing page and an idea, right? Like, it's actually, this is the application, and people end up taking you a lot more seriously. And it's just so much cheaper to design than it is to code. So yeah, that would be one tip. But I'd say even before you get to that step, make a beautiful landing page, like a pre-launch landing page, and kind of like, it's a smoke test in a sense, like fake it that you've got it, and drive a couple $100 of Google Ads traffic with buying intent to your landing page. Put an email form that says get early access and get free for life. People that get early, like some insanely enticing offer. And then once they do that, what I would do is I would have a link to a type form inside there and saying, hey, to redeem this lifetime offer or whatever discount you're offering, just please fill in this survey. We want to get some information from you. And at the end of the survey, the last question, make it like, hey, is it okay, yes or no, if we jump on a call to talk about this? And yeah, and just talk to them, record the conversations, transcribe it, and then do some qualitative coding on it, and just see if you can find any themes, pain points, common pain points, the strongest ones, kind of prioritize them. And that should give you a good sense of whether this is something that you should invest more time in or not.
And so what's like a litmus test that you would recommend to founders who are going through that process and they've done the interviews, and then it's like, okay, well, how do I know if this is a go or no go decision?
You have to trust your gut to a certain degree. For me, like, I just knew, because it was such a strong pain for me. And I'm just like a normal dude like everybody else, and like probably other people would have it as well. I can't with a straight face say an answer to a litmus test. I think that it really is situational. But I mean, if you see that your approach is highly differentiated from all the other existing alternative solutions in the marketplace, and you think that you have the technical capabilities to actually pull this off to a point where it's reasonably competitive to the incumbents out there, then just, yeah, go for it.
And a lot of things that I've been coming across is when founders speak to their target audience, a lot of their users saying, oh yeah, I'll use your product when you have this, or I'll start paying for it when you have Y. How do you set that kind of ceiling where, when you speak to those people, and, you have to make money for a business, you have to survive, you have to make a living if you do this full time.
Yeah.
How do you kind of determine or ask the question about how much would you pay for this? Or what would be required for you to become a paying client, kind of thing? Yeah. How did you go about that?
For us, it was free to join the platform in the beginning. So it really wasn't a question that I asked early on, because our initial idea was to do a commission-based model like Clarity.fm. But when I did start asking those questions later, when we moved to a membership monetization model, the answers that I was getting were wildly, like, there was so much variation, right? Like, some people were saying I'd pay $1,000, other people were saying I'd pay $100. And you just do enough of these calls and ask enough people, and you kind of figure out what a baseline average is. And then I would just like divide that by 4, because people always exaggerate what they'd be willing to pay.
Okay, cool. And I know with Growth Mentor, you really focused on a community aspect, in the business success. How did you go about approaching creating a community from the ground up? What did you do? How did you do it?
So the community at Growth Hunters is really unique in that it's all centered around the core values of like people helping people and humility and active learning, right? So learning by doing, and that it kind of mirrors our core values. And it's very important if you're setting up a community from the beginning to be cognizant of what your core values are, right? You have to stand for something, I think, early on. But once you get that out of the way and you start getting people on your community, you need to really take a hands-on approach with them. This is not easy. It's not like a channel or anything, right? This is a full-time sort of engagement. You can spend many hours talking to these people, trying to help them match with other people in the community, which is something that I think is a big contributing factor to our success, is that one-to-one personalized nature of matchmaking, right? So anyone that joins Growth Mentor, like I'll jump on a 15-minute call, although many times it goes up to like 30 minutes and I don't mind, whatever. And I just listen to their story, right? Like what's their challenge, their pain points, and give them personalized suggestions, right? Like that, things that don't really scale are incredibly important. And if you're starting a community, a lot of people now think that let's start a community for our product, but like what are they going to talk about? Like what are some of the topics, right? So if that's something on your mind, making community, make a list of like 40, 50 different talking points that you think could happen on the platform, on your Slack or wherever you decide to put it, circle.so, whatever. And just be present on the channels and engaging, asking people's opinions on things. It's a lot of hard work, right? So it's not something to be taken lightly.
And how did you start? What things did you do that were successful actions that led to your community to grow and flourish?
For us, it was just the social proof angle of it. Like what we did is we made this Slack bot where every review that a mentor got, it got piped into a Slack channel called real-time reviews. So everyone in the Slack community would see the review and then the mentor who got it, and it just reminded them of the value that the community was offering. And it was also a bit of a growth loop, because they'd see a review that's similar to a pain point that they're having, a conversation like on a topic that they're interested in. And they click in, they'd see the mentor, and then they'd be like, oh wow, this guy looks cool, right? So, and they book a call. And then the mentors love that as well, because that's a big reason why they mentor. It's for that social proof, and not even social proof, just like that internal proof as well, that yeah, I know what I'm talking about, like I'm good, right? So a lot of imposter syndrome around with people that are generally highly intelligent. The more intelligent you are, I think that you have that more often than the lesser so's. So being able to be reminded that you know your stuff and you're appreciated, and people like your attitude and approach is something very valuable.
Yeah, no, it's good. I really like that idea with the bot throwing up the reviews in real time. It's good, like instant kind of gratification, validation, and visibility, right, for everybody in the community. Right now, I think you're in a good growth spot with the business, from what I know. Are you considering, like, from a funding perspective, are you staying down the bootstrapped approach? Are you considering raising any external capital? I always like this question because like people raise money for different things or for different reasons. It's always like unique for each situation, but I feel like you've really taken on the bootstrapping approach, and I wanted to ask why. Why'd you do it this way?
I mean, the reason why I did it this way in the beginning is because I didn't have any real reason why an investor would invest in me. I didn't have that social proof, right? And I was like, why I wouldn't invest in me with some idea? So I didn't even bother thinking about it, right? I was just trying to like kind of pragmatic about it. Like, why would someone invest in me when I have 0 MRR, right? And it's like, there's so many other companies that are investable. And then we started growing, and then my mindset changed. I was like, well, why should I get an investor now and get pegged to a low valuation when I know I'm growing right now, and I just wait a little bit longer, I can double my valuation. And then I kept waiting. And then it got to the point where it's like, well, I forget about the valuation. I'm making like enough revenue right now that I don't really even know what to do with, like, what am I going to invest in next kind of thing. So it just got to that point where it's like the best spot to be in, where you literally you wouldn't even know what to do with that money if you had it, kind of thing, right? Like if somebody can say, here, take $10 million in funding, like I would do literally nothing different than what I'm doing right now. So I'm just not interested at all in getting funding, and also because I just don't want anyone to tell me what to do. It's a very personal thing. I just like having that autonomy and doing things my way. I'm not embarrassed to say it.
Oh, it's good. No, we've spoken to a few founders as well who were of a similar type of mindset as well. And I think it's like, it really is case by case. And I think at the end of the day, it's like when you give up equity in the company, you lose control, you lose
Yeah.
direction, you know, you start reporting to somebody with like your actions and things like that. So my recommendation always to always founders that we chat with is try to bootstrap it whatever way you can until you get to that point where you've grown the business to a point where you have product market fit, you have a good MRR, say, I don't know, 20, 30,000 MRR a month. So on the point of like talking about fundraising, what for you is currently like the long-term vision for the company? Would you ever consider fundraising, or you want to keep this totally bootstrapped? And in general, like where do you see the company going?
Yeah. So we tend to keep things in a 3-month zoom out, because we've made many plans in the past, product related, product strategy, product roadmaps, and they've generally never panned out exactly like we thought, because we get new ideas all the time from talking to our users. Like, I can answer the question like, where do I see this 6 months down the line? But I think it's reflective of the overall sort of long-term vision, and that's to build more community features within the actual application, so that it's not just so that the functional job isn't just relegated to, hey, how can I book a call with a mentor, but more like, how can I also find peers that might not be growth mentors, but might be other members of the platform, to find someone to potentially be a co-founder with, or maybe collaborate and do co-marketing opportunities, or find someone just to be a brainstorming partner. So we just recently launched this feature called Community within Growth Mentor, whereby the mentees have profile pages as well. And they can message each other. They could see what sort of networking objectives they've got, and just sync up, right? So there's a lot of goodwill that's been pent up within the community from the mentors helping people for free, which like now the mentees are like, well, how can I give back as well? How can I pay it forward? And it's this kind of contagious, this vibe of like just people helping people. So our answer from a product perspective is, well, do you want to repay it? Well, help somebody else out. You know, that's our long-term vision, like creating the most helpful community on the planet for founders and marketers. That's not just a community of like this asynchronous sort of like messaging thread system like Quora and Slack and all that, but more of a like, all right, less is more sort of concepts, whereby we're just being a catalyst for like really awesome one-on-one genuine connections. Because I think that's what social networks are lacking, right? It's that real sort of genuine connection on a one-on-one level. And like, we're never going to become better from a product perspective to some of the other platforms out there, specifically made for messaging and whatnot. But like the vetted nature of Growth Mentor, I think, is very conducive to just being a hotbed for just really awesome connections with people, like almost like a catalyst for serendipity. I like to say, because you never really know what's going to happen off of the backs of meeting somebody. You know, on a 30-minute call. I think it's ever more relevant now than ever with this whole like work remote, and people are just itching for networking and meeting people, but there's just so much noise out there. So that's kind of the problem that we're trying to hopefully solve in the coming years.
Yeah, and talking about like noise and distractions, how do you keep your community focused and engaged, and having like removing the clutter, or you know, the things that can ruin a community? Like what would you recommend as some options there?
So in terms of community, there's two aspects of community at Growth Mentor. There's the Slack community, and then there's the community within the actual application, right? So we're, as a long-term sort of vision, we're trying to move the community off of the Slack and onto our actual application, right? So some of the things that we're trying to do to keep the noise out is don't give too many ways that people can network, right? And focus it on what we call the help request functionality. So help request is where a mentee can basically say, hey, I want help with XYZ, right? And then mentors apply to it and say, hey, I can help you with this, right? So recently we just allowed everyone in the community, even mentees, to be able to apply to help requests. So it's kind of a growth loop to get people to interact with each other, all centered around though that core thesis of, hey, I need help. And then there's another person on the other side saying, yeah, well, I'm willing to give it, right? Because I have the skills that you lack, kind of thing, right? So let's chat. So again, more of that like less is more sort of mentality of keeping it focused.
No, it's great. I like how everything circles back around the pay it forward mentality, which I think is the key thing in the community. So awesome job on making that work. You mentioned that you work in 3-month windows. I'm curious, like from like a product perspective in terms of road mapping, how do you determine what you're going to work on next? How do you prioritize on the next feature set in terms of like what's going to be the ROI on it or impact?
We I'm not going to pretend to be cool and come up with some framework like ICE or whatever. We basically just wing it. We have conversations, me, Jessica, a lot of the mentors, and we just talk to a lot of people and kind of piece the pieces together, and we have brainstorming sessions, right? And we just like literally talk it through, right? And by the end of it, we're just taking notes. And we're like, all right, let's write down that idea. And we kind of prioritize it in real time. And then at the end of these sessions, like it's distilled down this one pager of like what we're going to do next, kind of thing. And we usually do these once every 6 weeks or so, because we do like these cycles where we do 3 months building, and then we want to like pause for a bit for 2 months and promote and market those features. And like have enough time to actually see the data of product usage from those features before jumping immediately into something else, right? Because I don't believe that you have to always be building and always be releasing features. Like you see some of these change logs that some of these SaaS startups have, and it's insane. Like every 2 weeks, and they're just like feeling like you also have to do it to keep up with the Joneses, right? Like always be deploying stuff. But I think it's totally cool to just sit on your laurels for 3 months, reflect, market what you've already built because you've spent all this dev resources building this thing. It's like, well, what you need to have a go-to market strategy for every epic that you work on, right? Like for us, it's that three month period, right? Like recently we released a new integration with Google Calendar for the calls, and like we still haven't even scratched the surface yet of marketing that, and the community mentee profile pages, filtering by networking objective, like that's going to take some time for us to properly promote, right? So and in the meanwhile, we just keep talking to people, and the dots end up connecting. So no magical formula here, we're just winging it, kind of.
No, I think the magical formula really is speaking to your customers.
Okay.
Period.
Yeah. All right. So I guess
Like,
that's it. Magic.
I know it's not rocket science at the end of the day. I think a lot of companies, a lot of founders constantly get into sometimes this like tunnel vision or innovator's dilemma. Like, oh yeah, I know what's best. And they don't speak to anybody.
Yeah.
But just like channeling a lot of knowledge with your community and with your target users, I think that's how like a lot of businesses successfully are built. So
Yeah.
we need more of that. And I think what you're doing is right because it's working. So great work.
Thanks.
I'm going to wrap up with some questions I always like asking everybody. First one is, tell me something that's true that almost nobody agrees with you on.
Ooh, this is a good one. I'd say that teams are overrated. It's like building a good, awesome team. I think that there's a lot that you can do without building a big team, just by upskilling yourself and leveraging freelancers. And the reason why is, not to say that you shouldn't have a team, right? We have a team, albeit a very small one, but it's still there. But that took like 2 years to build up. Like we made our first full-time hire, like, I don't know, 4 months ago. It was just me, Jessica, and our outsourced developers doing literally everything. But if you have, there's a lot of pressure to build team in these, and a lot of propaganda around it, right? And I think it gets people thinking that they need to raise money to hire these people, because, and then that gets them down that VC rabbit hole thing, right? Because I need to raise money to be able to get a team, because I need a team in order to do X, Y, Z, right? And build this awesome thing. But I just don't think that's true. And the reason I'm saying that is because like we've proven that it's not. It's just been like 2 people. We have 10,000 calls booked and like insane reviews, right? So like people like the product, it works. But the challenge with that though is that you have to, if you want to do the non-team thing, yeah, great. It gives you extended runway, so you don't have to go down that rabbit hole of raising funding, but you have to wear many hats. It's extremely difficult. And you have to upskill yourself in many different areas and do everything as much as you can until you realize, all right, well, I'm really good at this and I'm kind of good at this. Yeah, but I don't like doing that. So like, let me find that freelancer for that bit, like going through that introspective journey to figure out really what it is, what holes you need plugged, and doing it in a lean kind of way, leveraging the gig economy. I think that it's extremely powerful. And like, imagine 1985, right? You told some entrepreneur that he could go on this one, he could look at this screen and he could push a button and then he could hire like the best person on the planet for like this job that he's suffering to find someone in his local city for. Like his mind would explode, right? Yet we're still chasing the same classic methodology of like, I need to hire someone full-time, pay $100,000 a year, right? And it's because that's the rates now. There's all this free money floating around from the VCs that the salaries have just like inflated big time. So I just don't think that you really need a team. Like, at least early on, until you get product market fit and hit, like you said, that 20, 30 grand a month mark.
Well, that leads into my last question. And I think you touched upon something which is interesting. I think more and more successful people are generalists, like jack of all trades, you know, the ones that are good at a lot of different things, but not exceptional at one specific thing. So my last question is, what would you advise a 30-year-old self?
Ooh, a 30-year-old self. I mean, when I was 30, I was like 6 years ago, like I was over analyzing everything and trying to do like 3-4 variations of the same thing and then getting feedback because I didn't have confidence. And like, I would tell him to just do it one variation, execute, and then spend that extra time that you would have spent over analyzing, and spend more time at the gym, out in nature, quality time with your family, because, you know, we're getting older and like, we're not going to be able to do the same things that we can do now when 10 years pass, right? Like, life's not all about growth, right? Like like monetary growth, right? It's about growth altogether as a human being and also as a business person. But just don't lose track of like the things, the small things that we take for granted. I waste a lot of time in my early 30s just like clicking around, you know, like staring at the screen for like, just like forcing things, you know. And I'm slowly starting to wean myself off of that sort of mentality that you have to be in front of the screen working in order to be worthy of something, right? Like there's this thing that we're always chasing, right? It's I don't know. I think a lot of
endless.
It's endless.
Yeah, I think switching off as an entrepreneur is very difficult. And I know I'm married. I have 3 kids. When I come home, I'm really always trying my best to be like, okay, switch off work, focus on, you know, bigger, important things in my life. But it's just so challenging sometimes because you're always thinking about it.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that was super informative. Thank you so much for participating in our show today. But for everybody listening, this was another Off the Record episode. It's a podcast with the goal to build a community of founders and investors around it so they can help each other build better businesses. And thanks again for listening. And I really appreciate your time again. Thank you so much.